A 37-year-old Lloydminster tow truck driver attending a service call had to be airlifted to Edmonton Hospital with serious injuries after an accident just southwest of Lloyd last night. It happened at 7:25 on Township Road 494 between Range Roads 12 and 14. RCMP say an eastbound pickup hit the ramp of the parked tow truck, which had its lights activated. The pickup was launched into the air and landed on the cab of the tow truck. RCMP say alcohol and drugs don't appear to be factors. Constable Kelsey Davidge reminds drivers to take extra care around emergency vehicles.
When you are driving in the closest lane to any stopped vehicle with their flashing lights activated, whether that be police, ambulance, a fire truck, a tow truck, maintenance, or construction worker, you must pull over if possible to that farthest lane to give those workers extra space and time. If you cannot move over safely, you must slow down to at least 60 kilometers per hour or the posted speed limit, whichever is lower.
Davidge says the tow truck driver is expected to recover. The driver of the pickup was treated at the scene for minor injuries. RCMP continue to investigate. The Lloydminster Catholic School Division is gearing up for their annual Christmas concerts in this weekend or weeks beyond the classroom. We see how live streaming the concerts returns this year, this time being more student-run than ever before.
Students in the Catholic School Division are getting prepared for another year of singing. This year, it's the students behind the scenes who are taking a bigger role, having one student take the reins and direct all 9 planned shows.
You know, if another global pandemic happens, there's this to kind of help parents at home or anybody who can't come to watch these events get to see their grandkids in action. And I heard that last year. And I had a couple, I think there was a couple who approached me and said that their parents in Italy got to see their grandkids and they were so happy about it.
A mentor and longtime helper of setting up the concerts, City Councillor Jason Whiting has high praise for Maya's leadership abilities.
She's been, super easy, just open to learning and open to taking this thing and running with it. And really, again, like I said, more and more I'm hands off, and this is just something that they're doing on their own. And with Maya's guidance, she's been awesome to just kind of run with it and provide this.
For Maya, the added responsibilities pair well with the career she aspires for.
Mainly for directing. I really want to go into film production and whatnot after school. I've been looking at going to Vancouver Film School for directing.
And that's all for this week's edition of Beyond the Classroom.
At Lakeland College, our students go beyond the classroom for immersive, hands-on learning experiences. It's about experiencing the real world, because the real world doesn't wait, and neither do we.
Abby St. John joins us now to have our first look at the weather, and what are we expecting for the next few days?
Well, we saw a very nice sunny day out today, and it wasn't too cold for at least the time period that I was outside. I wasn't outside too long today, but we did have a fairly sunny day out today, like we saw the last couple of days, which is nice. We're going to get more heavier cloud coverage on Friday, but we're still looking, hopefully still looking that it will be quite sunny for the rest of the week up until Friday, so tomorrow. And for this evening, it's 0 right now. Wind chill feels closer to -6. However, with the winds, we are going to keep on experiencing some strong winds throughout the winter, as we usually do every year. 24 kilometer per hour winds currently here in the border city. Across the region in Alberta, 0 out also in Marwayne, St. Paul, and up in Lac La Biche, -1 in Cold Lake and Vigorville, and also out in Wainwright, and then +1 in Provost, Vermilion, Bonnyville, and out in Edmonton. And then on the Saskatchewan side, -3 in Isle La Crosse, 0 out in Maidstone and Green Lake, +1 in Pearson, St. Walburg, Meadow Lake, North Battleford, and out in Macklin. And then overnight tonight in North Battleford, drop down to -6, breezy this evening. Otherwise, the clouds will start to increase, 19 kilometer per hour wind, so it's going to be quite windy out tonight. And then tomorrow, expect a daytime high of -1, low clouds followed by some sun. So you'll have some cloud coverage in the morning, but it should dissipate throughout the day and we'll get some nice sunshine, 15-kilometer-per-hour wind, so not too bad. Overnight tonight in Cold Lake, expect low clouds, 15-kilometer-per-hour winds, and the temperature will drop down to -6. So it's going to be quite cloudy out tonight. And then tomorrow, those low clouds will remain, 13-kilometer-per-hour winds, however, so it won't be too strong with a daytime high of -2. And then overnight tonight here in Lloydminster, similar to Cold Lake, we'll have the low clouds. However, it will be quite breezy. This 19-kilometer-per-hour winds will carry over into the evening and it'll drop down to -6. And then tomorrow, expect a pretty sunny day out tomorrow, similar to what we saw today. 17-kilometer-per-hour winds and a daytime high of -3. So it's going to feel quite chilly out tomorrow, actually, with that wind. That wind chill is going to make things cool off just even more. And then, like I said, Friday, expect some cloudy conditions with a high of -3 and a low of -9. We have a low of -11 for tomorrow as well for overnight temperatures. And then on Saturday, a mix of sun and cloud, mostly cloudy skies, but we will see some sun throughout with a high of -1 and a low of -8. And then we have another weather photo submission from Greg. Thank you so much for sending this beautiful sunset photo from here in the border city. If you would like to see your weather photos on our show, please email us at weathers@stingray.com. That is a first look at your evening weather forecast. I'll have more in-depth overnight temperatures later on in the show.
The crop season for Saskatchewan has come and gone, and despite the extremely dry conditions, the crops appeared to yield well. Our Thomas Wildman has more in this week's edition of the Crop Report.
Today, I'm happy to be joined by Mackenzie Ledoux, one of the crop extension specialists for the government of Saskatchewan. She is here today to give us a bit of a wrap-up on the crop season for Saskatchewan. And so thank you so much for being with me today, Mackenzie.
Thank you so much for having me today, Thomas.
And so we're now almost into December, and so all of the crop producers have, of course, finished up harvesting. So what have the overall yields looked like for the province of Saskatchewan?
Yields definitely varied for a lot of our producers based on where they were within the province. So overall, our average yields for the province were estimated for all of our crops. So hard red spring wheat was estimated to yield 43 bushels per acre, durum at 24 bushels per acre, and oats at 82 bushels per acre. When we look at some other crops such as canola, we're seeing that yields were estimated to be 33 bushels per acre, and flax is estimated to be 18. When we look at some of our pulses, we see that lentils were estimated to be 1,101 pounds per acre, and chickpeas at 858 pounds per acre. What we're seeing is that, again, our yields are dependent on where you are in the province. For example, on the west side of the province, there was a little bit less moisture, and the west side was estimating a little bit lower yields due to that lack of moisture, and whereas the east side had a little bit more moisture, although not enough in some areas, most definitely. However, that moisture that they got did help with those yields a little bit, and those yields are a little bit higher on the east side of the province. And when we look at quality for our crops, we're seeing that overall, the quality of Saskatchewan crops is really being estimated to be above our 10-year average, where a lot of our crops are being estimated to be within the top 2 categories for all of the grading of the crop.
So now we'll move to the Northwest, which is, of course, the region that Lloydminster was in. And, of course, here a lot of producers were talking about how they were quite dry. But was that consistent throughout the rest of the region? And just overall, how were our yields compared to the rest of Saskatchewan?
So in the Northwest, what we're seeing is that although it is on the west side of the province, the north side of the west side did get a little bit more moisture, and our yields in the Northwest are a little bit higher than the provincial averages. But of course, that is dependent on where you are in the Northwest. Of course, as you said, around Lloydminster, it was a little bit drier for sure. However, our Northwest does encompass essentially a very large portion of the province, and again, that portion of the province was very variable given the rains. So when we look at the Northwest specifically, what we're seeing is that our yields are a little bit higher than the rest of the province. For example, for oats, it's 93 bushels per acre, whereas our provincial average is 82. For barley, it's 67 bushels per acre, whereas the province is 56. If we look at hard red spring, we're seeing 49 bushels per acre being estimated, whereas the provincial average is 43. When we look at canola, we're seeing that it's 43 bushels per acre, and the provincial average is 33 bushels per acre. So again, that northwest region, there was limited moisture. However, the moisture that was received early in the season really pulled through for a lot of the producers up there.
And so one of the concerns we talked about throughout the whole year were how good the hay crops and feeding crops were going to be for livestock producers. Were the crops good enough that livestock producers should be good for a long winter?
Producers were concerned about their winter feed supplies earlier in the growing season when they were forecasting what this fall was going to look like. Many found that they were able to secure feed from other parts of the province or neighboring provinces overall, and they now find that a lot of them have adequate feed supplies for this coming winter. When we look at our hay yields specifically, we see that provincially alfalfa yields are 1.22 tons per acre, brome alfalfa is 1.19 tons per acre, and green feed is 1.69 tons per acre. On irrigated land, of course, the yields are a little bit higher, with alfalfa yielding 2.8 tons per acre and brome alfalfa yielding 2.12 tons per acre. Silage yields provincially are at 7 tons per acre. A lot of our producers are feeling that the hay and feed that they were able to maintain and secure this summer are of good quality.
So it's been a very warm start to the winter, Mackenzie, but I know from some of the talks that I've had with some producers, they were hoping for a little bit of freeze and a little bit of snow to help replenish those moisture reserves. Is that a concern for the entirety of the province with how little the moisture reserves are after a tough season this year?
As you said, we did have a little bit of a warm start to this winter, and what that allowed producers to do was to really wrap up the field work that they were doing, of course applying their chemical and fall applied fertilizer at appropriate timing for sure. However, it did allow them an extended season to do their fall field work. So that allowed them to take a little bit less off their plate. As when we look at soil moisture, however, we see that soil moisture as we go into this winter was definitely limited. Of course, that's going into the winter, so anything can happen in the winter. Of course, there were some wet snowfalls that came through a couple of weeks ago throughout the province, and that really helped producers with building up some soil moisture. However, we're far from that adequate level of soil moisture provincially. What we are hoping for is that producers do have a lot of rain and wet snows come through this winter, and hopefully that they're able to maintain those in the crop stubble and be able to catch some snow and help those fields fill up those soil reserves.
Thank you so much for all the information, Mackenzie, and we will definitely talk to you again in the new year about the crop season once it starts up next spring.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Thanks for having me this summer, and I look forward to working with you again.
And Abby is back now to have a second look at the weather.
Thanks so much, Leanne. It's currently 0 here in the border city. Feels closer to -6 with that wind chill. We are experiencing strong winds currently, 22-kilometer-per-hour winds. I mean, we see very high wind speeds throughout the month or throughout the winter, so it's definitely not uncommon. The warmish temperature is kind of uncommon for this time of year, but definitely the wind is the same. A little bit more cloud coverage, which is what we're going to see into the evening. Into tonight, we're going to see a little bit more heavier cloud coverage, a little less tomorrow during the day, which is what we saw today, which is nice. Current temperatures across the region, -1 in Cold Lake, Athabasca, Rocky Mountain House, and Whitecourt, +1 out in Edmonton, -3 in Edson, -4 in Jasper, and -2 out in Red Deer. And then on the Saskatchewan side, 0 out in Meadow Lake and Melfort, 1 in Prince Albert, North Battleford, and in Saskatoon. And then up north in Saskatchewan, -3 in Uranium City, -16 in Stony Rapids, -12 in Wollaston Lake, -14 in South End, -7 in Flin Flon, and -2 in Buffalo Narrows and La Loche. And then if you take a look up north in Alberta, -3 in Fort Chipewyan, 0 in Fort Mac, -1 in High Level, and -2 in Slave Lake, Peace River, and in Grand Prairie. And then heading down south in Alberta, -1 in Coronation, 0 out in Calgary, 3 out in Medicine Hat and Lethbridge, and Banff is sitting at -8. And then on the Saskatchewan side down south, -1 in Kindersley and Swift Current, +1 in Moose Jaw, Yorkton, and Regina, and +2 out in Estevan. And then taking a look overnight tonight in North Battleford, -6 will be your overnight temperature. And then breezy this evening. So the wind's going to speed up to 19 kilometers per hour overnight tonight. And then the clouds will start to increase as we get later on into the evening as well. Overnight tonight in Cold Lake will drop down to -6. Low clouds in the sky, 15 kilometer per hour wind. So it's going to be quite chilly out tonight. Overnight tonight across the region, -5 in Meadow Lake, -7 in Bonnyville, Provost and Isla Crosse, and -6 out in Paradise Hill. And in Isla Crosse, there's about a 76% chance of a little bit of snow early in the evening. So it should start in the early evening, and then it should taper off as the night goes on. More temperatures across the region overnight, -9 in Myrna, -5 in Pierceland, -8 in Unity and Wainwright, and -7 out in Calgary. And Pierceland also experiencing a 68% chance of a little bit of snow, but it's later on in the evening, so it's going to occur later on. And then overnight tonight here in Lloydminster will drop down to -6. Breezy this evening and low clouds in the sky. 19 kilometer per hour winds is expected overnight tonight. And then over the next 7 days here in Lloydminster, we'll have a high of -3 and a low of -11 for tomorrow. Mix of sun and clouds, similar to what we saw today. And then on Friday, a little heavier cloud coverage with a high of -3 and a low of -9. On Saturday, to start your weekend off, mostly cloudy skies with a high of -1 and a low of -8. On Sunday, expect a very sunny day out today, or on Sunday, with a high of +1 and a low of -5. And back on Monday to start your week off, a high of +1 and a low of -5. And the clouds will remain, but they will start clearing off as the day goes on. And then on Tuesday, expect heavier cloud coverage with a high of +2 and a low of -4. And then on Wednesday, to round out the next 7 days, a high of +6 and a low of -5. Mix and sun and cloud, similar to what we saw today. That is a look at your evening weather forecast. We'll have more news coming up after the break.
The Saskatchewan government is hoping its new urgent care centre in Regina will help alleviate capacity issues at hospitals in the province. The centre is currently under construction and will eventually treat non-life-threatening injuries and offer mental health supports. CTV's Mick Favel gives us a tour of the facility set to open in the summer.
Electrical, plumbing and heating, and drywall are all installed. It still needs some finishing touches, but officials say Regina's new urgent care center is 85% complete. During a tour of the facility, the sentiment was clear. Given the current strains on hospitals, it can't open soon enough.
This urgent care facility will help alleviate the pressures in our emergency rooms and to ensure that Saskatchewan residents are able to receive the care that they need.
The center will be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with close to 120 staff, offering after-hours care.
A key goal of this facility is really meant to make healthcare accessible for the people in Regina and surrounding areas. And our focus being, treating people in the right place at the right time with the right providers.
The hope is to address specific areas under extra pressure in the healthcare system.
Timeliness and access to medical care, whether that's a broken leg, a mental health crisis, or an addiction issue. These are the things that we know we have a significant demand for. And we know that our frontline workers in our emergency rooms experience the impact of these challenges every day.
When you hear our national government and our collectively our premiers talking about we need to morph and change how we're delivering healthcare in Canada, as I said, this investment is precisely that.
Once construction is completed, equipment will be installed and medical teams will begin training. Regina's Urgent Care Center is hoping to start seeing patients in the summer of 2024. Meanwhile, a site for a similar facility in Saskatoon was selected in April. Mick Fable, CTV News, Regina.
Inflation isn't the only reason Christmas might not be as sweet for some this year. A strike at a BC sugar refinery is causing shortages across Western Canada. In fact, some stores in Saskatchewan are rationing their sugar to just one bag per customer. CTV's Stacey Hine has more.
With a sugar shortage across Western Canada, it's going to be a bittersweet holiday season for bakery owner Tracy Muzzolini.
What we're all thinking about now is Christmas, because this is where our big time is to shine. And when we haven't got one of the main ingredients for our baking, it becomes really serious.
White sugar, brown sugar, and icing sugar are becoming more difficult to find since 138 workers at Rogers Sugar in Vancouver went on a strike in mid-September. The BC plant is one of 3 Rogers Sugar refineries in Canada, and this one feeds the Western market.
The company reached out last Thursday and asked if we would be interested in going into mediation, and we have decided to go into those talks.
Mediation is scheduled for this Thursday and Friday. In a statement, parent company Atlantic Inc. says Rogers Sugar looks forward to the opportunity to work constructively with the union towards a fair collective agreement that will return our Vancouver plant to full sugar production as soon as possible. Here at home, the sugar rush is real.
The shelves are empty in there. There's no sugar, and there's people looking at the sugar and wanting sugar, but there's no sugar.
Well, yes, of course I've seen it. Brown sugar in particular was a shortage.
Walmart, they were emptied. All the Rogers sugar was gone.
It's affecting everybody, bakers alike, home bakers and production bakers.
Muzzolini says right now she's focusing on securing enough sugar for the Christmas season. Stacey Hine, CTV News, Saskatoon.
And time now to have a look at all of the cute pet pictures you've been sending in.
We want to see your pets. Send photos of your pet and their name to have them featured on Pet of the Day.
I'm speaking with Patrick Lancaster with the city about the recent grant allocations under the Family and Community Support Services program. Patrick, can you tell me how these agencies are selected?
The grant process for that is fairly similar to most of our department's grants. We also administer a Saskatchewan Lotteries Community Grant and a Safe and Healthy Communities Grant. But the FCSS grants, which just completed a few weeks ago, are focused on programs and services that are preventative social services. So these are programs and services that would build resiliency, build skills, build social connection, awareness of social issues and community resources, with the intent to prevent people from falling into crisis or needing to leverage emergency systems. The idea is to help make people more self-sufficient. So a call for applications was put out to the community. Once we received the applications, those applications were then turned over to what we have a community, the Lloydminster Community Advisory Committee. And that committee is made up of 8 members who review the grants and then make recommendations based on if they align with the FCSS values, if they're preventative in nature, if they show a need and a solid plan. They make recommendations on how grant dollars could be allocated to those different groups. There's an open call for grant applications, and those organizations that receive funds have been selected from those that applied. Not everyone who applies receive funds, and not everyone who applies gets perhaps their full ask of funds, because as we saw this year, the demands for the dollars far outweighed what we had in our budget. There was about $808,000 in asks, and we only have about $385,000 to allocate.
Does the city have an evaluation process of some kind that they do with the groups to make sure, the money's going where they said it was going to go?
All of our grant programs have reporting requirements attached to them. With the FCSS program, organizations have to present a final report to us in 1 year's time. So the grant period starts January 1st and ends December 30th. January 14th of the following year, they'll have to submit a final report, which includes the financial summary and also a summary of their outcomes. So all FCSS programs have to ask specific questions to show that they are achieving the goals that they set out to complete, and then we collect those outcomes to report back to the province, who is our partner in the FCSS program, and as well as provide them with a financial review. Residents who are interested in the outcomes of the grants and these projects actually can access this as part of our annual report that we post on the City of Lloydminster website page at lloydminster.ca/FCSS. Our 2022 report is up there now, and it has all the outcomes from the FCSS grants, Saskatchewan Lotteries grants, and Safe and Healthy Communities grant from the previous year.
So it's my understanding that the groups have to make a submission ahead of time to be considered for the grants?
There's an open call for grant applications, and those organizations that receive funds have been selected from those that applied. Not everyone who applies receive funds, and not everyone who applies gets perhaps their full ask of funds, because as we saw this year, the demands for the dollars far outweighed what we had in our budget. There was $808,000 in asks, and we only have about $385,000 to allocate.
How important is it for the city to support these services? There's such a demand for all kinds of activities and programming. So how important is this?
Oh, it is so important. The community organizations, particularly those that are ran by volunteers, are really the social fabric of our community. And all the groups that applied, even if they didn't receive funds or even if they didn't receive their full ask, are doing tremendous work for our residents and for our community. And we really do value the work that they do.
Okay, Patrick, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Furniture set and design supplied by Furniture Gallery, downtown Lloydminster.
Shauna Godin with Catholic Social Services in Lloydminster joins me now to talk about Angels of Hope. Shauna, thanks for joining me. And can you tell me about the program and how have things changed this year?
We, in general sense, we provide supports for all faiths and cultures for children and families with mental health and addiction struggles, financial barriers, and newcomer families, and also families with children with disabilities. We provide supports to seniors as a resource, and going with them to appointments and helping them, in waiting rooms for, dentists, eye doctors, that kind of thing, and also companionship.
And how do you find the donors to match up with the families for this initiative?
Yes, so this is one way of getting the word out. Another way is we're pretty active on our Facebook account with our Gateway for Newcomers Facebook. So we put that out regularly. We found in the last few years that word of mouth has really carried far, and we get the same donors back every year, and they seem to have spread the word, and then more come along from that.
With inflation, you know, there's a lot of talk about how even middle income families are starting to struggle to make ends meet. Is that what you're finding as well?
You are exactly right to mention about middle income. So some of the stereotypes is that this is just low income families, but we're certainly seeing a rising need in medium to, you know, low high income families. It is the rising costs of gas. It is the rising cost of groceries. Of course, there's all that ripple effect with that, with shipping into the stores. And so we just see that healthy food is a lot more difficult to attain for families that are already struggling with higher home bills, gas bills, that kind of thing.
So exactly who does Angels of Hope serve generally on a year-to-year basis?
We kind of stick to it being fairly small, and typically it, like I said, it's similar donors that come back through a round. We don't want to compete, and we're not duplicating for the other awesome resources in this similar area that are in the community. So it is different in the sense that it goes to those that we serve specifically within our agency. And as far as where the donations can be dropped off, they can come to our office, or we can, if it's easier, we can also come to people's homes or meet them somewhere and pick up the donations as well. We're hoping to get the deliveries and that going off around the 18th, 19th of December. So they are there for Christmas.
If somebody's interested in becoming a donor, how do they go about doing that?
They just have to call our office, ask for Johanna, and our number is 780-875-9084. We also have some suggestion lists if people need ideas for meals or non-perishable staples, that kind of thing that we can provide.
Is there anything else, Shauna, that you'd like to mention about this that I maybe haven't asked you?
I think that covers the bones of everything of Angels of Hope. I would like to take the opportunity, though, to thank the community in the last previous years has been extremely generous and has always amazed us at what they have donated and brought to the families that are in need. So I just want to extend a great big thank you to our community. It's very generous.
And thanks for your time today, Shauna. I do appreciate it. And that's all the time we have for you this evening. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night.